So this is just some examples of the opportunities that we do experience in sharing the different pools of resources. We have a keen interest in the supportability and the stability of the network services that we turn up. So an example there would be like, in a lot of cases, I know that when folks provision services, if there's no alarms and it's looking good, then it gets handed off and goes to the next group and finally makes it to service activation or acceptance or whatever for the customer. But for us, if we're turning up a service and we see that there's some threshold within the service, maybe the loss of light is closer to the edge and really shouldn't be, and maybe that's happening at a location that's very remote, and we know that it's going to take probably 4 to 5 hours for a field tech to get there, then we're going to put in the extra time and effort to try to get that to a point where it's operating within the center of the threshold and it's something that's more stable and more supportable down the road, setting ourselves up for an easier support situation. So I think that's one of the best things about kind of combining the two tasks within one group of people. And then, of course, we build familiarity with problematic infrastructure. So we're able to go back and when outages occur or while we're dealing with deployments and we recognize that, when you open the cage door in Denver, there's some power drop or something, then we know that down the road, if there's some sort of problem going on a certain span or a certain circuit and it passes through the Denver node, then our troubleshooting tends to take us and look at that history of what recently happened when we were trying to deploy those services or we're working with that route. Other things that we experience, the vendor support and response time. So you might know that for most support organizations, whether it be Cisco or Level 3 or Equinix or Switch and Data or whatever, they have a group of or they have a set of processes and time frames that they use to support outages. And that's usually, ASAP, within hours, that sort of thing. Whereas when you go to them and you say, I'm going to install something, then you're working with 2 and 3 days to try to get something installed. And I think that because we do a lot of work in the field, and it's continuous. It's daily and weekly sort of interactions with these folks that we often get away with, and there doesn't seem to be a problem when we say we really want to deploy this fast, like tomorrow or the next day. It's expedited, and we get a lot of support there because it's just kind of the mode of work that we're already doing on a day-to-day basis, whether it's an outage situation or a deployment. So that works out well for us. So of course, when you have to deal with outages and restoring service quickly, you tend to come up with a lot of tricks and ideas about how to deploy a service quickly, and you get a lot of practice with doing that sort of thing. So between the two groups, the expediency or the work practices that go into turning up services, that pace is already established and something that it's just part of a daily work practice. And then, of course, also just working within the facilities. As you may know, NLR has spares at different locations that they use in case of outages. And while you're working at nodes and installing things, you just come to learn a little more about what's installed, what's available. And it's created a couple opportunities in the past for us when there were outages where we knew, hey, over in that shelf, new deployment, go get it, guy, move it over here and bring that service back up. And, okay, so I think those are some good experiences. So some of the risks that we do understand and we work with are just tracking the deployment and history and events within within our tools. This is actually something Grover and I talked about a couple weeks ago, where, right now we use a ticketing system to track everything we do, which is, it works, but we lose some information while we're doing that. And so it was really interesting to see Luke come up and give some information about a circuit planner tool, because I don't know, it was only a couple weeks ago that we talked about it, and then here's somebody already sharing information on it. So that was really nice. But it's obviously something that we understand, and we're working to improve, and obviously working very quickly. So the tools and process specific to problematic infrastructure, again, we have this wonderful database. We keep track of services and POP sites and things, and there's been a lot of work to do general cleanup throughout the POPs, but as part of the install process and working with the remote hands, we do get feedback from those guys while we're on the phone about what certain panels look like, or what certain cabling and power and this sort of thing looks like. And we don't really have an area at this point to capture a lot of that feedback, to know that we have, a cleanup list that's very specific to a certain site, and we got to get there, and we got to make that happen. And a lot of the engineers, they hear it, it doesn't go into the ticket, there's not a specific place for it, so we kind of lose that sort of good information. And then, of course, in both areas, there's always competing priorities. That's always the risk, One of the downsides of turning up services inside a ticketing system is that everybody can write into the ticketing system. They can email in. So while there might be an outage, when there's ticket comments coming into the ticketing system, and so-and-so saying, when's that going to be ready? And the next guy's saying, what's the due date on it? The next guy's, how many more days? And they're all writing in on the deployment because everybody's focused on that. But we have an outage. People tend to get a little confused with what we're doing or what we should be doing. So sometimes that can create a little bit of confusion. But for the most part, when there's an outage, everyone's clear on what to do. Okay. So this is just my ideas on creating our next opportunities. And again, I was just really pleased to see that that Luke was coming up and giving some information about a circuit planning tool, because the tools in the process, I think, are what we're really getting good at, and what I think make the most difference for us. We're not going to go out and add another 10 network engineers to any of our teams, or a big group of project managers or anything like that. We're going to work with what we have, which is pretty much our teams that we have now. The timing thing isn't going to change, so continuing to work on our tools and process, I think, is the right thing for us to do. I actually have, I'll say it's an opportunity, to work with a lot of different tool sets on a daily basis in support of a variety of networks. And so I use the tools that the Indiana group creates, and they're really easy, and like I said, they turn them up fast. I use our tools at Scenic, and they get the job done. They're not the best. I use the tools at UW for the Pacific Wave and Transit Rail, and those are good tools too, but hands down, when it comes to tools and how easy they're to use and how on track they are with what we need them to do, it's definitely this group that puts it together the best. I think tracking deployments and creating metrics to help us estimate what we can do or keep track of what we have done is something that would really benefit us. Most of the time when there's deployments, I tend to get a lot of questions about how long is it going to take us? And of course that goes into, well, where's the hardware? Are we moving it from one location to the other? Is it sitting on someone's desk? Are we shipping it out? All these sort of factors that people actually know, but it's a good amount of exchange and some delays there. And I really think that if we had a planning tool like I think we're working on now, that if Bonnie wants to give a commitment date to one of her customers about when we're going to turn something up, she should be able to just kind of look at what's actually being deployed and give that information, and that should be it. hardware reallocations and tracking. It's a challenge for us. There's tools behind it, but it's still a lot of counting on network engineers to put serial numbers inside of tickets, and service desk folks supporting us and making sure all the administrative changes to databases happen. So I think that there's some things that we're going to probably get underway there if I was understanding the presentations from yesterday. So I think that's a great thing. Again, the knowledge and documentation repository from our postmortems. So we've just recently done, I know Grover and folks are doing internal postmortems. I recently got a template from Ron Milford and started to complete a postmortem for him on another outage. And I thought, wow, okay, this is just going to go into a ticket. So what can we do with it? Where can we put it so that next time there's something there we can search on and learn from? And so just another idea there. Process, communication channels, and establishing those versus ticket comments when it comes to deployment. I commented on that earlier. It can be a little difficult for network engineers when they're trying to focus on getting certain things done to have a lot of comments coming in from different directions. So probably some improvement we could make there that would be really easy. And then just kind of the process of quoting contracts. When is the actual go time to deploy something? Are we clear about that? Who says what it is? How do we know? What are the triggers? If that was in a system, it would be a little bit easier than knowing, is it a go from Joe? Is it a go from Bonnie? Are we ready to go? Do we actually have the hardware? And so there's just little things like that I think that within systems we could actually make it more clear, and people wouldn't have to be managing tons of email to figure out what we're doing next. So I don't mean to paint a horrible picture or anything. I think given the amount of people that we have to support this national footprint, it's just absolutely amazing, which is why we really need and appreciate the people that we do have, like Chris Coster or Grover, who are just willing to get in there, get it done, and make things happen. It's really the only kind of attitude you can afford.